One. Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. It is
Woohoo!
our continuing and maybe never-ending preseason coverage for the 2024-2025 season. We are recording here on the evening of Wednesday, October 16th, and this is our ACC podcast, or ACC Preview podcast, I guess we want to call it. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. Up top with me, we got both Davids, David Griggs and David Dorman. Down below, we got the two Johns, John Titel and John Stalika. I'm the odd man out here, I guess. Uh, but as I said, this is our ACC show, so why don't we get right into it? And as we mentioned, when we were doing some of our other conference preview shows. The AP preseason top 25 poll is out. The top 10 has a pair of ACC teams, both Duke and North Carolina, in it at 7 and 9,
Yeah.
uh, and that's it for the ACC.
Well,
Then Griggs, that might, I don't know that I ever only see two top 25 ACC teams preseason.
yeah, it's been a bit. Yeah, they've added more teams to the conference, but it's resulted in fewer teams in the top 25. A little note here about Duke and North Carolina, Chad. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but I was doing some research today, and the two schools are just 8 miles apart. And they've never met in the Elite Eight or any rounds prior to that in the NCAA tournament.
Uh, on that note,
They
Dorman,
haven't.
let me start with you. First question: Are Duke and North Carolina the two elite, really head and shoulders above everybody else? And if so, who's better of those two? Do you think heading into the season?
I think it's a tough call right now. Who is better? I do think there's two teams in the ACC and everybody else. And why I say it's early, too early to call this one, because Duke is going to rely on a lot of freshmen. They're bringing back Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster. Those two guys played big minutes last year, scored. But they bring in one of the biggest recruits in years, and Duke is thrilled. Cooper Flagg is supposedly absolutely phenomenal. He is going to be like a major, major difference right out of the gate freshman year. He was at the USA trials this summer, and they put a junior team together to practice against the Olympic USA team. And the comments coming from the pros that went to France and won the gold medal, they couldn't believe this kid's talent at his age. So I'm really excited to see how good Cooper Flagg really is, and it should be really cool to see. So I'm not sure because Dukes also has the best freshman class. They're bringing two or three kids that are going to play big minutes with Cooper Flagg. So we'll see how good the rest of the freshmen are before I decide who's better with Duke and Carolina.
Yeah, and how about this Cooper Flag title? I know you follow NBA drafts, and I know it's a little early to talk NBA draft, but I think he's already projected as the number one pick for next year.
It is not too early to speak about him as the number one pick. I don't know that he's a generational Wembanyama type guy just because he's not 7'3" or French, but his skill set is off the charts. And what's interesting, I wish Matt was here, our recruiting guru, but my understanding is that like Flag is not something where like he was the best eighth grader in the nation like 5 years ago. He's just been slowly, and then like exploded last year and seems to have backed it up, as Dorman said, with the performance against Team USA. I've seen nothing bad about him. So, like, barring anything shocking, I think he is going to be the number one pick. I think he is going to be the best freshman in the country. I don't know about ACC Player of the Year because there's some great teams and players in this conference, but he certainly is in the mix.
Well, Stalico, we mentioned North Carolina. How about the Tar Heels, who are, as Griggs told us, only 8 miles apart?
Well, they're only going to be 8 miles apart, but you're still going to have RJ Davis. He's going to be the major returning player for the Heels. You also get a notable scorer in Cade Tyson, who's coming in from Belmont. And if you're looking at some of their incoming freshmen, Ian Jackson, Drake Powell will figure to fit the bill right there. But Carolina, this is a team that's going to be spending quite a bit of time on the road before they really get acclimated that much at home because they already got trips to Kansas, trips to Hawaii, and the Maui Invitational. And that's just before Thanksgiving. You go past Thanksgiving, you suddenly get Alabama, and then you get neutral court games against Florida and UCLA. Not a whole lot of bye games for the Tar Heels on that schedule.
Oh, just wait till they get to conference play then.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they do get the West Coast swing now.
Well, well, but Griggs, I mean, how big of a difference is there between these two teams, Duke and Carolina, and the rest of the league this year?
Uh, I think it's notable, but I don't think it's so insurmountable. I mean, I don't think Duke and North Carolina are going to run the table except against each other, and then everybody else is going to be 5 or 6 games back. Wake looks good. I think Miami. I know I say this seemingly every year, and so they don't always play out, but I think they're kind of being overlooked a little bit. It's going to be hard to go there. It's going to be hard to go to Clemson. Uh, Virginia. I just think that like there's some teams that if they get them at home that are good enough to beat them on their home court. But yeah, I think Duke and North Carolina are the top 2 teams in the conference for sure.
Well, you mentioned a few other teams, and do you want to tell me on who the third team is then?
Uh, well, my pick is going to be a hard sell because it's a bit of a dark horse. I kind of like Miami, and I know that that's a strange pick considering how much they underachieved last year. They only
Massively
won 15
underachieved.
games. By the way, they were one of my preseason Final Four picks last year. So, based on the fact that they missed the NIT by about 100 miles, go ahead and take this as a grain of salt. But Nigel Peck is back. I think that his injury last year really impacted the team and was one of the reasons they struggled. And I think they add some pretty strong recruits and they went into the portal and got some players that fit that system. And I just think Jim Larinaga has a track record all the way back to his George Mason days of outperforming their preseason expectations, albeit not last year. But I kind of like this Miami team quite a bit. I think we kind of forgot just how good they were the year before last.
I think that's a great point that we may all be overlooked Miami just because of last year, and maybe last year was just an aberration. Uh, Salika, he also mentioned Wake Forest earlier. Is Wake Forest? I see they're getting a little preseason love. Are they good?
Well, now that we're getting into what is it, year 3 of the Steve Forbes era, there is going to be a little bit of now or never with the Deacons. Hunter Salas is probably the best player in the conference outside of the Duke and North Carolina duo right there. But you also got Cameron Hildreth's also going to be another notable returner for the Deacons, and you also get a notable freshman in Juke Harris, and also a hot transfer from App State and Trayvon Spillers.
We lost it.
Oh, the show's over. Oh God.
Oh, sorry. Did you want to continue with Wake Forest, Salika?
Well,
He's
well,
lost his thought.
you don't usually go to me whenever the schedules are related, but I think Wake did actually finally get the message that they're going to need to upgrade their schedule if they want to be a serious NCAA contender. They're going to be playing Michigan in Greensboro. They're also going to be going to Xavier to renew the Skip Prosser Classic, and they're going to be playing what's only going to be a 2-game ESPN Events Invitational in Orlando this year, where they'll play Florida and either Minnesota or Wichita, which may as well be a bye game at this point. But they do get a tough test in Texas A&M in the ACC SEC Challenge this year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting Wake Forest season. And Titel, I think we're remiss if we don't talk about Virginia near the top of the ACC every single year when Tony Bennett's the head coach.
Yes, I've heard rumors. You're going to have to go to Joby to find out if they're true. That this is
He's not here, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but
yes, that not
Push tempo.
he's at a Sting concert tonight, so we're going to forgive him. But go
Oh.
ahead.
totally 80s of him.
Why did he join us from the concert? Come on, Joby.
In Fields of Gold.
Yeah.
That's not to say this is a hot seat situation. I think Tony Bennett has the track record and the ring to say when he's done. But I've heard rumors, again, Joby would know for sure that this could be if this is not a good year, then he might choose to leave. He didn't get a ton in the portal. Jalen Worley from the Seminoles, Day Ames from Kansas State. So some major conference pieces. But I think that it's going to be very interesting to see if the Who's are mediocre, like 500 record, miss out on NCAA tournament, if Bennett just says, like I had a good run, but I'm done. Keep an eye on that. But again, talk to Joby for sure.
Dorman, we've now mentioned quite a few teams. We didn't bother mentioning yet the ACC team that was in the Final Four last year, albeit off of an incredible run beginning the ACC tournament, which they had come into stone cold. But NC State, all the DJs are gone. I think
The
I don't think
DJs
anybody
are
named DJ
gone.
gone. But how about the Wolfpack after what they did at the end of last season?
Yeah, the DJ game is over, and so is about 95% of their offense and a lot of the minutes played last year. Kevin Keats did an incredible job with that team. He went on an incredible run. I give him the great credit. He ran through the ACC. They were, half a second away from going home, and they hit a corner three to go to overtime in the first round of the ACC, or this dream would never have started. But I just don't think he's bringing back enough. There's not much firepower left in the tank here at NC State. Like you said, they lose DJs. They do add Marcus Hill, and they have some other good pieces, but I don't think this is ACC level pieces that are going to get you to the top of the conference where they're really going to threaten for a bid. So not the year, I don't believe, for the Wolfpack and Kevin Keats.
Yeah. The one thing is last year going into the ACC tournament, I want to say they were 15-10.
They're
And
on a four-game losing streak going into it too. They were stone
yeah,
cold.
and I think we were thinking they weren't even going to be in the NIT. It was ridiculous what they did. It was what Oregon State did in 2021 was not even to the level of what this was. It was crazy.
It was 5 games in 5 days in the ACC tournament, all that. Griggs, another team that was in the NCAA tournament with a fairly good 6 seed last year, made an Elite Eight run, the Clemson Tigers. Anything
Yeah.
out of them this year?
I think so. I think they're definitely back in the NCAA tournament. I don't know if they're Elite Eight good, but a very respectable 11-9 in conference last year. I don't want to get too carried away, but I think Brad Brunell is a little bit underappreciated for the job he's done at
Agree.
Clemson. Sweet 16. He's been to a Sweet 16 even before last year. His seat was getting a little bit warm going into last year. I bet they're glad they hung on to him. They have balanced scoring, but the one thing about Clemson is that they're just such a good and tough defensive team, and they can be hard to play against. I don't think they're going to keep pace with Duke and North Carolina, but yeah, I think they're back inside the bubble again this year.
Okay.
I will add one notable thing as far as Clemson. With a former UC player Victor Locken transferring to the Tigers, will he finally at least win a rivalry game? And a big offer with the Bearcats.
I gotta
Wins the
say,
South Carolina game, probably.
I think
so.
Clemson's going to be good this year, Griggs. I think they're a bubble team at best, though. I don't know that they're solidly in the field. But
We say that every year about Brad Brunell,
Yeah,
and then every year he delivers. So
Yeah.
I'm done putting him in the middle of the conference. I agree with Briggs. I think he's solid. They'll go. Shiplin's very good up front. They're bringing back Chase Hunter also as the guard. I think two guys these days bringing back is a solid core. I think they'll be just fine.
all right, okay. I guess I'm not loving them as much as you guys all are. I don't know what they do without PJ Hall, but
Not as good, but
okay. Titel, one of the really interesting offseason stories was going on in Louisville with Pat Kelsey coming in here. And I think a lot of people may think it's maybe too early to discuss this, but I think he may also be re-energizing this team a bit. And what about this Cardinal team after what they've been doing the last few years, especially?
what have they been doing?
Nothing, exactly.
there you go.
What they haven't been doing the last few years. I'll
Yeah.
put it that way.
All right. Yeah.
I think re-energizing is an excellent description, Chad. I got to see Kelsey up close and personal as he's been at the CAA tourney in DC the past 2 Marches and winning them. So I think I've been in more press conferences with him than with Georgetown, it seems like. He's got a gazillion transfers, almost as many as USC. Javon Hadley from Colorado, Terrence Edwards Jr. from JMU, Kashawn Pryor, South Florida, Ali Khalifa, BYU, Chucky Hepburn, Wisconsin, Abubakar Traore, Long Beach, Rain Smith from Charleston, Kobe Rogers, Charleston, Corin Johnson, Washington, James Scott, Charleston. It's a brand new roster in all sense of the word. But as you heard, 3 guys from Charleston, so they at least know his system. I think that it might be asking too much to put all these guys into the pan and cook up a 20-win season in year number 1. But I was very impressed with him at Charleston, and now he's going to have major conference talent both transfer and recruiting. So I think the future is bright in Louisville, as David said, for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
I totally agree. There is just the product on the court at Kentucky, at Louisville, the last few years will
Don't make
you
that
won't
mistake.
even know what that is because Kelsey has a system and they will run it and they will learn how to play his style. So the effort's going to be an A plus. Kelsey is a tireless worker. He will work until this product looks good. Sorry, Griggs.
Oh no, yeah, you just don't want to confuse Kentucky and Louisville. They'll
No, I
shut our
don't.
site down. One of my things is one of the things about Pat Kelsey that we see both at Winthrop and certainly at college at Charleston or however they're branding themselves now is one of his superpowers I thought was developing talent and developing a system. That's so now he goes to Louisville and as Titel just went through basically their whole roster, it's almost plug and play. Uh, it's different a little bit. And can he be successful in the portal era at a level where more and more teams are sort of relying on rebuilding their roster from year to year instead of building it from one year to another, or reloading their roster instead of you know what I mean?
Let's get through a few other teams here. Go through the rest of the teams here, in fact. But Stalika, Georgia Tech. See anything in them coming into this season?
I actually see a lot more continuity out of the returning lineup for the Yellow Jackets right here. You get four notable people returning back in the Dongo, Lance Terry, Nathan George, and one-time Florida Gator Kawasi Reeves. But they do get one notable transfer out of the portal, and that's going to be JB McCollum coming out of Oklahoma. I feel like Georgia Tech, not too far from the NCAA tournament in recent years, but this could be the year where Damon Stoudemire's team finally sneaks into the field.
I think I'm looking at this Georgia Tech team as my dark horse team in this
Really?
conference
Oh.
that could surprise. I don't think there's enough depth there on the roster, but they could steal a game from a Duke or Carolina midseason and be enough to propel them into a tournament bid. I think. Titel, how about the Orange? Are they anywhere near a tournament bid this getting to this season?
Um, I want to say yes, but I'm going to say maybe. Coach Autry did win 20 games last year in his debut season, didn't make the NCAA or the NIT. We all remember the days of Coach Boeheim when he would never, ever leave the state of New York during non-conference play. You got to give a little props to the Orange this year. They're heading to Knoxville on December 3rd. Although we have to remember they went to Maui to play the Vols last year and lost by 17 last November. So we'll see how that goes. They had a McDonald's All-American and Donnie Freeman from the DC area. Some good transfers. Eddie Lampkin Jr. from Colorado, Jair Davis from Delaware, Jaquan Carlos from Hofstra, Lucas Taylor, Georgia State, and they returned Chris Bell and J.J. Starling. All that sounds great. They lost Judah Mintz, who was the heart and soul of this team, and
Yeah.
Quadir Copeland and Benny Williams, who was big size in the front court for them. I think 20 wins is a possibility. I don't see them winning 25, and I think they're going to be right on the bubble. But as we see in years past, they're always on the bubble, and they usually make it. They didn't last year, and then do damage once they get there.
Uh-huh.
We've certainly seen that.
Dorman, let's throw a few other teams out here. Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, Shrewsbury, the coach of Notre Dame. What I will say is, if you're going to get Notre Dame, you better get them this year because supposedly they have an incoming class that is supposedly fantastic. I think they got 4 guys already signed, and they're all in the top 20, I believe. So if you're going to want to take your shots at Notre Dame, it better be this year because after this year they're going to be loaded and full of talent. This year, I like Shrewsbury. I think he's a good coach. I just don't think they have enough top ACC talented basketball players to win enough games to, threaten for a bid here. So I think middle of the pack would be good for the Irish this year.
Yeah, I don't think Marcus Bird is enough to carry this team. I think they need a lot more to go with him. Griggs, maybe another team that really only has one player, Florida State, the Seminoles. I think Watkins is good, but do they have enough to come back from where they've been the last couple of years here?
I've mulled over this for hours and hours and hours, and I've concluded that no, they don't.
Okay. Well, that's a nice, easy answer there. Well, let's find somebody else to discuss then. Let's go back to Stalika. The Pitt Panthers?
Well, there are teams that's a couple of years removed from the NCAA tournament, and you still have Guillermo and Jorge Diaz Graham, but Other than that, and Ishmael Leggett, not too many players of note for the Panthers. You do get Damian Dunn out of Houston, but he was more of a bench player for them, so not sure I'd be high on the Panthers this year.
Well, I'll tell you what. We got three new teams coming to the conference. Titel. Two of them are coming from the Pac-12, which, because teams in California belong in the ACC. What about? Let me ask you about both of them. Heck, Cal and Stanford both coming to the ACC for the first year this season.
So I wanted to talk about Stanford specifically.
Okay.
The new coach, Kyle Smith, inherits a team that only won 14 last year. So I would hope that there are very low expectations on the farm. They're doing their best Syracuse impression, though. They're not going to leave the state of California in non-conference play. So they take a road trip to Santa Clara. They have a neutral site game against the Lopes in Palm Springs, and they have a near campus game against the Ducks in San Jose. Nice little scheduling quirk there.
Well, wait, but can we also stress that they will still end up with as many miles as anybody in the nation, probably, in terms of travel by the end
Sure,
of the
I think it's
ACC
going to
season?
hurt them in February and March. I agree, but in November, December, I think they'll have some
Okay.
gas in the tank. They do add a couple of nice transfers: Darren Sarin from Irvine and Chisholm Opara from Harvard, and they do return the big man, second team All Conference center Maxime Reynaud. But it's the amount of talent they lose that's just ridiculous. Kanan Carlisle, Jared Bynum, Brandon Angel, Andrei Stojakovic, Spencer Jones, Michael Jones, James Earl Jones, Indiana Jones, Mr. Jones, and you, like all the Joneses.
Well, they won't have to go far to see Stojakovic because he's just right across the bay.
Yeah,
He is good.
to kind of piggyback on that, I really like Kyle Smith as a coach. I think he'll do well there. Not this year.
Griggs, how about the Cal Bears then? What's the
Well,
second year under Mark Madsen now?
yeah, it's kind of hard to assess a team that's had this much turnover. At least it is for me until you saw him play. It has been a while since Kyle's been good. I kind of said in the write-up they struggled in the Pac-12, and now they've changed conferences, and they're in a better one, and they're going to struggle even more.
Fairly nice, but Dorman, Virginia Tech. Um, I think seven of the top eight players are gone.
Yes, Mike Young has just about lost everybody. What it happens to be when Virginia Tech's good, it happens to be a great atmosphere there
Oh
in their
yeah.
basketball stadium. It's a wonderful place when the place is rocking. But yeah, Coach Mike Young has, I think, lost six of the top seven. He's bringing in some transfers from Temple and Charleston, and Jaden Schutt, I believe, went to Duke, and he also transferred. Again, not enough ACC level talent to make any type of move. Not going to be the Hokies year.
Salika, you teased it the other night when we did one of our other podcasts. I'm sure you want to discuss it. Andy Enfield coming into SMU, who's coming into the ACC.
Yeah, you talk about Cal and Stanford having to make long road trips. At least they get a couple breathers where they only have to take the BART train to each other's campus. SMU, you're pretty much getting on a flight night in and night out to go from the East Coast, the West Coast, and whatever. But you're also talking about a coach that basically spurred a chain reaction that's also included USC, Arkansas, and Kentucky. But as far as who's going to be starring for the Mustangs, Chuck Harris is the only notable returning starter, but you're also picking up Matt Cross out of UMass and Kevin Miller, who's leaving Wake Forest. But other than that, it's probably going to be a long year for SMU as they get acclimated. But hey, at least their football team is a lot more competitive in the ACC than was expected.
Well, Griggs, that covers all 17 of the 18 teams that are worth discussing. Oh, heck, I'll throw them over to you. Boston College is in the ACC as well, aren't they?
They are, and they won 20 games last year. Earl
Yes.
Grant, you and I are a fan of his. We've been on his bandwagon since he was at college at Charleston. He's good at developing talent, but the problem in the portal NIL era is that at a place like Boston College, as soon as the talent develops, it's going to look to go elsewhere. And how do you build something from year to year? It's like every year he's starting over from scratch. And can somebody like Earl Grant, I don't mean this is demeaning. Is he fit for a place like that where you're having to reload your roster every year, as opposed to being able to develop the talent over time?
And I'm not certain that the school has the commitment that it needs to, that some of these other schools have to
Yeah,
in the new NIL era that
right.
we
Yeah.
see. But Yeah, BC is in the ACC, and they'll
Yeah,
probably
and God, they're bad.
pull a few
Yeah,
upsets this season.
yeah.
Uh, but I guess
I
on
think
that
they're
note,
more concerned about another sport that involves Hockey East, but that's just me.
Yeah, maybe. Probably are. Yeah.
on that note, what I want to do is go through each of you, and I'm going to ask you three questions that I'd like to ask. Number one, who's going to win the ACC? So I'm going to make you make that pick between North Carolina and Duke, or you can go somewhere else if you want. Uh, how many bids is this conference going to actually get? And any other final thoughts you may have on this conference? And Tytel, why don't we start with you tonight?
Number of bids. I think Duke and Carolina are slam dunks. I think Wake will make it, and then it's a toss up from there with Clemson, Pitt, and Wake in kind of the next tier. Excuse me, Clemson, Pitt, Miami. So I'll set the over under at 5, and I think that I'll go under just because I don't see Miami and Clemson or Pitt and Miami all making it. Could, but I'll take the under. As far as Duke versus Carolina for the title, I was impressed by North Carolina's offense in the exhibition against Memphis last night. I was not impressed with the defense or the turnovers. So I'm going to go with Duke, sight unseen, based mainly on the fact that Cooper Flag might be as good as advertised or better. As far as a fun fact, I'm interested to see how the travel does impact the West Coast teams, like Chad had mentioned earlier, just because, like, I read something about one of the schools bringing in like a NASA scientist to help figure out stuff, and
Yeah.
I read articles over the summer about how they would have to send like the truck with the equipment for the football, which is different than basketball, like on in advance. And like, do you stay or do you come all the way back? And they're like, I think it could be a nightmare. There's smart kids out there, so I think they can figure it out. But I think it's going to be interesting to see as the season progresses and the length of the trips increase if the quality of the team and the talent and the effectiveness goes downhill.
Yeah, you need like a degree from Cal Berkeley to figure out this travel, wouldn't you? Torment, let me go to you.
Tell set the total there perfectly at 5. I'm at 4 with Carolina, Duke, Wake, and Clemson. That's all I got. Those are the only 4 I think are getting in. I like, again, like Taytel, without seeing them really closely and stuff, I'm going to go with flat with this Cooper Flag, the freshman, and the Dukies to win the title. And my thought is here is the ACC is in a little precarious situation here because the SEC, as we went over late last night, is loaded and they're getting bids. And the Big Ten, I don't have as championship level teams, but they're getting plenty of bids. We haven't even gotten to the Big 12 yet, and we haven't gotten to the Big East yet. I think the talent is way down in the ACC. I don't think the coaching is anywhere near where it used to be, even 5 or 10 years ago. I think the ACC really needs to figure their things out here, or it could be a rough span here with all the moving pieces of these conferences. They didn't really add any basketball powers unless Cal and Stanford go back 10 years. The ACC needs to be careful and figure out what they're doing here with basketball.
You pretty much just stole one of my comments on the ACC there. Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more, Dorman, about that. You know that there may be a reckoning after this season in the ACC offices about what is going on here from a league that was once the dominant force in college basketball.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Stalika.
I think I'm going to also say Duke probably ends up winning the regular season title at least. I'll still go with 5 ACC tournament bids over NCAA tournament bids. Let's say Duke, North Carolina, but also go with Clemson, go with Virginia, go with Wake Forest. But wouldn't surprise me if Georgia Tech snuck into that pack and potentially stole a bid from another ACC bubble team. But if I'm going to go for a final thought, just imagine the ACC if they finally are able to break up the grant of rights, and you see teams like Florida State and Clemson beating down the door just to escape the conference. But who knows who would be wanting to join that sinking ship? Although you saw what happened with Cal and Stanford because they were getting off a ship that was sinking even faster in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Real quick, personally, I am going to go with Duke as well to win this conference. I am going five bids. I think I'm going with Duke, Carolina. My other two is I'm going Virginia, and I'm with Griggs earlier in the show on Miami. They're my fourth. I think a fifth team might get there, very much on the bubble first four type, from that Clemson, Wake, Georgia Tech type of group. But I'm with Griggs on Miami that none of you mentioned yet. But Griggs, up to you. Finish off the show here.
I think I'm going to go with Duke to win the conference. I know that it's picking the chalk, but they really do look the best. I know that sometimes you're a little hesitant to go after a team with so many young players, but anymore it seems like all of the top teams are experiencing a huge amount of roster turnover one way or another. So I like them. I think five teams get in, which I believe one of our historians will have to verify this. That would make the most teams in the ACC that have ever missed the NCAA tournament, probably by quite a bit. That would be 13. And one of my thoughts,
they got five last year also, but they had less teams. So
they had less teams. And my final thought is that this is ridiculous. And I know why it's happening. We all do. It's television contracts largely surrounding football. It's not about the regional rivalries and opponents anymore. It hasn't been for some time. But you kind of wonder, how is this going to look? And you had mentioned, Chad, what is the league office going to look like and sound like at the end of this year with the basketball product being diluted? And what do Stanford and Cal think? And with the Pac-10 or 12 or whatever, it's sort of relaunching. Would it make more sense for them to return to a conference that's a little more regional, to where they're not going across the country to get their heads kicked in every night?
Oh, it'll be regional, but you think they're going to really enjoy rivalries with Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State, and Colorado State? Probably not.
Yeah, I think Boise and San Diego State would kill them right now. I don't even think it is a rivalry. I think those teams are so far ahead of Stanford and Cal right now. But that's for a later show.
On that note, I do want to thank everyone for joining. This has been our ACC preview show. Make sure you check out the season preview tab up there for all the great interviews that Tytel has been doing, for Griggs's write-ups of the media days, and for all of these podcasts. But on behalf of David Griggs, David Dorman, John Tytel, John Sleeka, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back again with, I believe, our Big East podcast real soon.